Like having to deal with like your feelings and all that stuff, especially with what's going on now, sober is absolutely just nuts. Dude, it's like you feel that weird feeling and you're just like, well, I'm just going to go use, and then once I use, I'm going to feel all better. I mean, you work at it, you're like, it's all right, it'll happen, everything's going to be good, and then you lose your house keys.
Yeah. Or you make a reservation where you're like, if one more thing happens, I'm done. Like,
right.
You know. I mean,
well, that's what I said. I'm like, if Betty White dies this year, I'm using. I can't anymore. This is just too much. Yeah.
Got sober, we went into recovery, and then like the next year afterwards, all of a sudden this pandemic hit, and it took away our meetings, and it took away our social life, and that's kind of what made us feel like we were a person again after using. Was like being able to go out and have a good time without using, and like make connections with people. And then now that was taken away from us.
Right now is like basically the same thing as me using, but I'm not using.
I'm not saying like I was going to plan on using, but there's definitely some times where I got stuck in my head where I was thinking like, oh man, I hate feeling like I'm trapped. Right. I can't do anything. Like, what am I going to do? Just go walk around outside like aimlessly? Right. Having to be back in your old headspace, like alone, isolated, and then not using drugs though is like... Right. That would have felt unimaginable, you know, a couple years ago. Like being able to just stay put and not having to use. But some of those thoughts still creep back in, you know. Sure. And you it's not like you feel like you might act on them right away. But it's like, I think gradually as you keep having those thoughts after a while, all of a sudden it just turns out to where, like, you know, you get in a situation where one more bad thing happens. And then you go, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Then you're done. And you're just like, screw it all. I'm just going to drink, or I'm just going to go use, or whatever.
What have you been doing, I guess, to stay clean and active, I guess, during COVID?
Well, what's been really cool is the ability to have a wife that's got my back no matter what. Yeah. Yeah, she's at work and everything else, but I have enough time to where I get to sit back and just watch maybe Netflix and learn how to cook some good meals, so that way when she gets home, I've got something really killer for her to eat, you know, at least, you know, being that house man.
And then she'll definitely have your back.
It's brownie points, man. It's all brownie points. Making sure the house is clean and, you know, as much as I think it is, and, you know, just going out and doing the daily thing and, you know, reaching out, getting a hold of different people that, you know, I built relationships with through this whole thing, and just making sure they're okay makes me feel better myself.
So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Waterford, Michigan.
Okay.
Originally from Waterford, Michigan. Grew up there, spent 21 years of my life there, and then we decided to move out to the hot box, which is Arizona and Tucson.
What made you want to move out there?
Well, my dad worked for GM for like 35 years. My mom and dad, when dad retired, didn't really like the snow anymore, and Mom always had really bad arthritis issues, so we're just like, let's try a hot box, you know? I grew up actually in a really awesome household. My dad was a deacon. My mom was a secretary of a Baptist church, and I was pretty much like born and raised there. Like, I didn't really know what a drug looked like for a whole 20 years. We had a really cool, you know, community of people who really cared, and it was great. And then when we decided to move out to Arizona, I didn't have that connection anymore. It's like, you're 21, you've already, you know, solidified your friendships and everything else.
And they're going to last forever.
They're going to last forever. Yeah. Everything's going to be great. And then you move and you're like, dude, I got to start all over again. I don't know who these people are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know who these people are. So, you know, especially at like 21 years old, you know, move in, go over to my aunt and uncle's house, and hey, let's go to bars. So that's where it kind of started, the whole shindig on that, and finding out that I really sang really good on key after a couple fifths of Jack Daniels or whatever, you know. Just having fun and just having a great time, and, you know, just sleeping with different women and just be like, oh man, this is great. What did I miss my whole 21 years of life?
Yeah, you know? They were lying to me when they said this stuff was not going to be good for me down the road.
It's like, this is the greatest thing on earth, man. This is great. It feels awesome, you know?
Yeah, so So you had a good childhood and things went all right. So you think that you've just been born with the addictive traits, I guess, to where you drank alcohol and all of a sudden it just took off from there into how did it go, I guess? When did you start getting in trouble for the stuff you were doing?
Like, well, I started getting in trouble anyways when I was a younger kid because of the fact that, like, you know, everybody sits there and says people who go to church are like perfect people. In a lot of ways, man, we're just as bad as anybody else who doesn't go to church. You know, like you get a PK, a pastor's kid or whatever like that. Man, they're so bad.
I know.
They're so gnarly.
Yeah.
You know, you get into so much trouble with them, and I got into trouble anyways during that point, but I just had no like substances to sit there and say, you know what, this makes it all worthwhile. So when I started the drinking real heavy. Started, of course, ignoring my parents, and I got my vehicle out there. I was gone most of the time. I really never came home. And man, the first time I ever tried weed, I was working at La Paloma Golf Course, and we were sitting there doing the sand traps and stuff like that. And
those caddies will have all the shit, man.
Dude, they do. You know what I mean? So we're sitting there doing the sand traps and stuff, and one of the guys comes up. He's like, "Hey, man, you want to come over to the house and smoke?" I'm like, "Smoke what?" And he's like, "Weed." I'm like, "What's weed?" And he's like, "Seriously?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've never been around
it." You really were a good kid.
I've never been around it. I never saw, like, we had DARE and stuff like that in school, but I'm like, this is an opportunity to just, like, not pay attention. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, go over to his house, and we're sitting there, and he had, like, a 4-foot bong, and I just ripped one up. And he's like, take the whole thing in, you know? So I ripped the whole thing up, and I sat back on his couch, and scared me to death, dude, because I would, like, I'd put my hand right in front of my face as fast as I can, and it'd be like, cha, 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 like trails. So the whole ride home, I'm like, they're going to know, they're going to know, they're going to know. And it ruined the deal of it for me. So I just went back to drinking alcohol at that point, because I'm like, you know what? This is a lot easier to deal with. You'll know if you're having a little too much to drink or not.
I was the same way with weed. My first experience was nuts. Like, I remember I was so against it going through high school. It was like, I will never smoke weed. I will not put that shit inside of my body.
Yeah, that devil's grass.
But alcohol, you know, is okay.
There's commercials for it. It's fine, you know?
Alcohol is legal and weed is a drug. And I remember one day I just said, okay, I'll do it. And I was out in the backyard at one of my friend's house, and there was like 8 or 9 of us. And I took one hit. I used to smoke hookah back then. Yeah. Before we had that
was really popular back
before
in
we
those
had
days.
these little guys.
Yep.
And man, and so I took a big rip of it from like how I would with like a hookah, and then I got so high I started getting paranoid. I needed to sit down. I couldn't find anything, so I got a ladder, and I opened the ladder up, and I climbed to the top of the ladder, and I was sitting on top of the ladder looking down at everyone, and everyone was laughing. And I was like, why does everyone think this is so fun? Like, why does everyone like doing this? And they're like, oh, because you took too much.
You know, my whole thing, like, after the weed deal, like, you always get introduced to other things when you're hanging around. You know what I mean? Hanging around the weed guys, you'll get to know some of the meth dudes, and you hang out with some of the meth dudes, you get to know some of the heroin guys and everything like that. And it gets kind of crazy it's like a whole community full of like losers, you know? And it's like, you know, when you're feeling like that yourself, you're like, I totally belong here. You know what I mean? You really do. And it's crazy like that. And meth was really bad for me. I got into meth, man, I was in it tight for about 5 years, did it every day consistently. I mean, it started out as a weekend thing, but that lasted like 2 weeks, and then it went into a daily deal.
How'd that go? Were you just drinking and you met some guy?
We were over at a party. We had just gotten back from a bar, and it was a bunch of like friends of ours and stuff, and we had just gotten over to their house, and everybody just kept going to the bathroom back and forth, and nobody invited me. All of a sudden, like, my buddy's like, hey man, I guess we should invite you in here too. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? You know, and he came back. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Coke. All right, I've done this before.
And if you're gonna like that, then you're
really
gonna like this.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy, but man, I tried that first line, and actually the first line I ever did was like a hot rail. And I don't know if you know what those ones are or nothing like that, but man alive, that's
what is it? What is it?
Well, a hot rail, you've got a glass tube, and you just cut up basically line, right? And you've got a glass tube, and you heat up the end of the glass tube. Well, the other end that's cool goes in your nose and you snort the line. Well, it turns into smoke as it's going up and up the
Oh,
deal. So you're basically smoking it through your nose and
so
getting in.
smoking a line.
Ooh, that
Man,
right then and there, it took me. And that one line lasted me 8 hours. From then I was like, dude, this is magic. This is the
how'd you
greatest thing in the
feel?
world. Oh, I felt uplifted. I felt like I could take on everything in the world, and you know, I'd take on about 5 or 6 guys and just probably beat them all to a pulp. No problem. It's really easy.
Yeah,
Even
getting
though I don't know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? It's like I could, you feel like you can do it, and that's what started the meth, the drinking, and everything else. And through that is when I ended up getting into some knowing some friends with White Hate and some other clubs that will not be named. That was always some crazy stuff, man. It's like the things I saw, and after getting out of that, and like what was really crazy is I walked away from meth, and I quit cold turkey. I ended up going out to Phoenix and working for a guy who cleaned restaurant hoods for a living during the nights, and I didn't know anybody who sold or nothing like that. But the only drawback is he smoked weed, so it's like, well, I'll give you some weed. I'll make sure you're stoned. Just don't do meth. And I'm like, this is a deal.
what was it that made you quit meth cold turkey?
Well, what it was we were like I'd go from house to house to house to live because I couldn't go over to my mom and dad's house in that state. I came over to my mom and dad's house once, I guess, and knocked on the door, and my mom answered, and I'm like, hey, I need a place to crash. She's like, you can stay here one night. I slept straight for 48 hours.
Yeah.
That's what she had said. She goes, you had slept for 40 hours straight. You got to go up a couple times to use the restroom, and that was it. So when my dad came home that second day, and he's like, you got to get out.
Yeah.
I can't have you here, which was the hardest thing for my dad to ever have to do. He didn't want to have to kick out his kid, but he's got to watch after my mom's too, and keep her safe. Because I'd steal or do whatever I needed to do to support my habit in that way.
Yeah.
So when I got out of that house and I'd just go from house to house to house, and I had ran through like 5 different places to live, and it became evident that this is no way for me to live anymore. And the last place I was at, my buddy, who they all did meth, his wife had died. She had jumped her car in a median because she was just ticked off one day drunk driving and killed herself, but the 2 kids lived. And when that had happened, the whole house went, up in belly, and basically, hey, you guys have got to get out because nobody's paying rent. So I just tug along with them and this other guy in Phoenix, and he's like, hey, this is the thing. If you guys are going to be here, work with me. I'll make sure you guys are high with pot, but you're not gonna do meth here at this place.
Was that your rock bottom, I guess, was moving around from place to place?
That I lived in my truck a couple times here and there. Everybody's rock bottom's different. It's just whatever they deem that it's like, I can't do this anymore. Somebody's might be like, they don't have an allowance anymore. That's their rock bottom maybe. But, mine was just not being. I couldn't face my mom and dad. I didn't call them for months on end just to let them know I was okay or nothing like that. I maybe had gone over there or called them on Christmas, just, hey guys, give me any gifts or something, probably so I could sell them. More than likely. But
guys like us have like a collective of rock bottoms. I know I did. Like something horrible would happen to where I had no other options, and then I would try and get sober, and then I kind of get some momentum for about, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, and then I'd get to where I felt okay again. I go, oh, I can use again, and then all of a sudden I hit another unbelievable rock bottom, and then all of a sudden I started ending up in jail. Yeah. And I ended up in, just tons of legal trouble, and no one wanted me around.
Right.
And I think the final straw was I had it happen too many times, and I'm like, oh man, I realize that I'm in my 30s now, and it's like, no, it's no joke. I can't joke around anymore. I can't roll the dice. I'm lucky that I'm not in prison for the rest of my life for some of the things, And it just gets to where you either you take the opportunity, one of them, and that was your rock bottom, and then from there you go out and you figure out how to live life, or B, you keep using until you kill yourself or end up in prison.
Right. Yeah. Those are the only two scenarios you really have when you hit a rock bottom. Do you want to continue to live in that way, or if not, or do something about it? And you've got there. It takes action. And, it really does. And like I said, I've been blessed. Like I didn't go into recovery till I was 40. I've never been into a recovery place or nothing like that. I'm just like, yeah, everything's fine. And
so this was your first time coming into treatment?
Yeah,
so
at 40 years old. Yep.
What made you want to come up to Prescott here?
Well, what made me want to come up to Prescott, like my wife and I had moved from Tucson to Flagstaff anyways.
Yeah.
Because we were sitting tired of like the heat in Tucson, and it was just getting too much. We wanted some trees and everything else. So when we got there, my wife loves Only the Brave. The movie that Brendan put out.
Yeah.
She loves that movie. She's all about firefighters anyways. It's really cool for her. And we ended up actually moving to Prescott because of the scenery, or the Flagstaff because of the scenery in Prescott.
Yeah.
So when we got there, my drinking ended up getting really bad. She cleaned out my truck. Those little tiny bottles of Fireball?
Yeah.
The ones you can get like in a 20-pack or whatever like that?
Yeah.
She cleaned out 5 grocery bags full.
Oh my God.
They were all empty.
Yeah.
But they were all those.
Were they just on the ground?
They were I had an
secret...
extended cab.
Yeah.
So like I called that my file cabinet. If they were empty, it just goes in the file. You know what I mean? Just went in the file.
Yeah.
That, losing lottery tickets, whatever like that.
Yeah.
Dude. So like when she told me that, it became really evident that, okay, like I got a problem, you know? And it was always with Fireball anyways, because, it's cinnamon. Nobody's going to know. To this day, I won't have anything cinnamon. Because I'm worried about it triggering something.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah,
we were talking about cinnamon something. You're like, oh, I can't have it because I remember you actually saying that. No,
I've got 2 rolls of like Lifesavers that are cinnamon that I've never touched. They're just probably for about a year. No, I don't want to pop one and be like, oh, let's go to the store.
It's weird figuring out what some triggers are that you don't know you had until after you get cleaned up.
Right.
Like I couldn't look at tinfoil. Like I went into the house at Holdfast, and then like they had tinfoil while I was getting sober. I'm looking at it every day while I'm getting food. I'm just like, shit, man.
Right.
And then now I go back over to my house in Vegas, and my dad's like, they made dinner or something, and then they're like, oh, wrap it with tinfoil. And he goes, yeah, I'm really glad that we still have some now, or we actually have some now, or whatever. And I look at me, I'm like,
it's kind of a funny joke now. I mean, because now you can sit there and kind of laugh at it, and be like, yeah, dude, crazy, right? Like some of the smallest things that we couldn't even keep tinfoil in the house,
and like lighters and stuff.
Yeah.
Like just seeing lighters around, like even having one at my house that I have now. Just having it around, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I can't believe how I used to think of these things, and how I used to associate these things, and how deeply embedded into like trauma they are in me, to where silly little things like cinnamon can carry on throughout the rest of your life from just having to, the problems that we had. It's just, to other people, they see it as nothing.
Right.
And to us, it's like some life or death situation. It's silly.
Yeah. That's pretty much what the case is too. It is crazy, and it only happens when you start getting sober, and like the normies aren't gonna ever know.
No.
They'll never know. They'll never understand. They'll be like, oh, it's just tinfoil. It's just big red gum. It's just a lighter. It's just a tube. And to us, it's like you said, it's traumatizing in some way and aspect. It's always like in the back of your mind, it's a memory. It pops something up real quick.
Pens too. I had a hard time using pens
right?
afterwards. I was like riding with it. I'm like, I'm looking at it like, I can't believe. Like I actually, when I was at Holdfast, like I opened up my backpack and I had a ton, like just handfuls of those little tube pens.
Yeah.
That I go, I'm not going to use these anymore, guys. And we always ran out of pens in that office, so I just like left all of them there.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, thanks, Kyle.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, it was actually helping me to get rid of those. Have you came across anything else? I know you said your wife found all those fireballs, like empty bottles laying around, but have you personally came across any of stuff that you might have found that was from your past while you were in your sober life? Like,
I never
put
did.
A jacket on and all of a sudden open up. And
I never did actually. Yeah, I never did. I was lucky enough for that not to happen. But like my main struggle comes when I go shopping. Anyways, go shopping, go over to Walmart where the eggs are or whatever like that. You just a turnabout face, man, and there's a whole liquor wall.
Yeah.
And it's actually really refreshing to look at that and be like, man, how much money did I waste on all that? We could have had a house. I could have had a better car. I could have had better clothes that fit me all the time, instead of spending money on stuff that, I didn't have anything to show for it. And I think that's what really bothered me. I've got a little brother who's just 2 years younger than me. He's doing really good in life, and everything he has something to show for it. It's always something like that. And I never did. It's like I could have gotten like, $50,000 and I would have had nothing to show for all that money that I made. That's a real kick in the nuts, man. That really hurts.
Yeah, no matter how much it would have been, we could have had $1 million in the bank. We would have figured out how to spend it on our habits. We would have figured out some way to use it unproductively. But at the time, that's all we could think about, using it for. Going back to what you were saying about the alcohol, like, living in Las Vegas, it's like living anywhere else. I try to tell people, but you have access to the Strip, so it's like if you want, you can go there. But we don't really think of it as anything very cool. But when we get bored, we'd go and spend money on alcohol or try and have a good time. And since I haven't spent money on alcohol or been going out drinking, I've been able to go on trips maybe a couple times a year.
I'm really lucky to just be able to pay bills now. Like that was my biggest thing. It's like I never paid bills. It was always in the black, all the time. And it was really funny when my wife's like, hey, when she told me my credit score now finally, I'm like, holy crap, I've never had. It was always in the fours, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then now she's like, yeah, I think it's like 720 or whatever like that. I'm like, wow. Yeah. And it's actually because of the fact that I married her, because my wife's been sick. She just got 16 years sober, 2 months ago. So she knows the struggle that she did meth back in the day, but she knows the struggle that I was going through, and I'm lucky to have somebody who knows and still understands and be's my support. I think without her, I'd probably still be on the street.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard because my girlfriend, we've been together for about 7 years, so it's kind of like we're married, but she's a normie. She's seen it all with me, but then there's just certain things that your partner can't really relate to if they're a normie. So you're lucky that
very lucky,
because she has that level of compassion and understanding to where she knows how you're trying to explain an unexplainable situation, like the phenomenon that we have of craving and how the compulsion.
Right.
Normies don't have that. Maybe they might have it with other things like shopping or just social media or their phone or something. But when it comes to actually, why does he keep using drugs? Why? And why doesn't he just stop doing it?
Right. Yeah.
How do
my
you
grandfather
that
said
to
the
somebody?
same thing. He's like, why don't you just quit? And he's like, well, I quit smoking cigarettes when I went to Korea. I'm like, well, that's good. I'm glad you could. I can't do that when it comes to meth or weed or whatever. It was difficult for me to do. And trauma is different for different people. I remember when I was hanging out with a lot of the white hate stuff, and we to be part of them and to get in tight with them, it was, hey, you got to take this bat and you got to go have some fun with this dude. And it was either that or you have that done to you, and it's like, well, shoot, give me the bat.
Or they just say you have to do this if you want
you need to do this if you want in with us and get closer to us. Because I'd hear a lot of what they had to say, and I was a lost soul at that time anyway, so a lot of the stuff they had said made a lot of sense. When you're lost like that, you just want to belong.
Yeah, you want to latch on to something that
makes it different.
Makes you feel like you have support.
Yeah,
you need that support. And sometimes when you try to tell somebody oh yeah, God has your back, you're like, well, where is
he at? Right.
Where is he? How is he gonna help me with this situation? I need someone where they can actually respond verbally to me, on command. And I think that just came down to control. It's a lot of control.
Oh yeah, being an addict, you know how to manipulate, you know how to take charge, you know how to make somebody give you what they want, real easy. It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
You're like that rat in the end of the maze with the cheese. You're just trying to find that cheese, man.
Just like every day we'd wake up and we needed drugs we didn't have money for. You'd be okay, A, B, C, D. Okay, I'm gonna have to. And
either I panhandle or I go steal or I'll go sell some of the few things I had because I already sold everything that I had. To find out though where God comes into to everything now. Again, I mean, this isn't a typo for Holdfast, but it is what it is. Holdfast helped both of us out.
Oh yeah.
We're from cut from the same cloth on that place.
Yeah.
For sure. And they help show me, for sure where God lands in my life, and it's been really interesting. I've been sober now for 21 months. So almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And the blessings that I've had in a year and a half have been insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we still lived in Flagstaff before I ended up doing the 90 days and leaving.
Yeah.
And went back to Flagstaff and said we were going to move out to Prescott, but what person who's going through, I need to move here because there's more, community, there's more support. Not very many people do it. We moved out here in 5 months. So I was in a house for a month and a half with just one other person.
Yeah.
And it was actually really cool.
No, it was.
But the thing is, it was backwards though. It's almost easier for me if I was in a house full of guys, because then you get to learn how to coexist and react to different people in a healthy way, instead of just basically being your own resort with just one other dude. And it was actually pretty chill. And then the month before I was gone, I had done 60 days. And then that last month seemed like the whole house got packed. So I'm on another level, and these guys are way at a different level, just coming in, not washing their dishes. And
yeah,
that taught me so much patience and trying to learn to have patience. And, it was kind of like a shit show. It was kind of nuts, but, that's just what it is being in recovery,
What I was going to say is I had the same situation happen with me with Holdfast when it was still relatively new. I mean, it was, maybe 6 months or so after you went. But, it was me and then John, we know John from, he was a host on the show here at Recov for season 1. But it was just him and I and then one other guy. And from my previous experience, I've gone to rehabs with a bunch of guys, and it was a shit show. And there's always a handful of guys that are in there that aren't serious about getting sober. And when you come in, your mind is so vulnerable coming off the drugs and coming into this new situation and being out of your element that you're trying to latch on to something like how we talked about with just anything. And so you find someone that's nice to you, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I got some of this. I can, or I can get this. And then you go from wanting to be sober to just diverting completely away and going, okay, I feel comfortable with this. And there's always someone that sort of wrecks the opportunity, and I didn't have that when I was in there. It was I felt like we were trying to get sober, and we were making an impact on the other guys that were a lot younger than us that could have been in that vulnerable position, but they latched on. We had a solid group of guys, and just having it be only a few of us there and getting all the direct attention that we got.
Having dealt with that and then moving out to Prescott I ended up house managing for Holdfast for 6 months.
Yeah.
And that taught me even more yet. It's being
patience?
being in their shoes. It's like, wow, it's you think these guys when you're on the inside, you're like, yeah, they don't have to do much. They just got to drive us around and hand us our meds once in a while or whatever like that. It's a different monster than that, because some of these guys, they come to you and they talk to you about their feelings or whatnot if they're comfortable, and a good group of guys who were there for a purpose and not there because it was court ordered or their parents made them go or nothing. They just wanted to change their lives, and it seems like, you're not going to change unless you want to. Court can put you through it, and 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work.
Yeah, we talked to a few guys on here recently that once the court order stuff done, or drug court was done, once it got wrapped up, as soon as they got $20,
I'm free.
Yeah.
I can do what I want now.
Yeah, as soon as they got $20, they were out and using, and then, regardless of how much time they had, regardless if it was a year or 2 years, nothing really had changed because the court was keeping them from using. They didn't want to actually change.
Right. They just stopped so they didn't want to have to go to prison or deeper trouble, which you'd hope in that certain amount of time they'd pick up something and learn something, instead of just not being comfortable in their own skin, just waiting and counting down the days. till
that's so miserable.
they can go use. Yeah,
that's so miserable. Like the time moves so slow when you feel like you're waiting to have drugs.
Right. Oh yeah, when house managing here, hey, how many days you got? Oh, I got 30. Oh man, I'm about to get out of here. It's like I kept trying to tell the guys, I'm like, don't worry about the days. Look, like, think about the quality of time you got here. Have you done your workbook? What have you learned in your counseling sessions? Are you sharing? Sometimes I share, sometimes I don't. Well, that's the whole point of not sharing, because you get vulnerable, and guys don't like to be vulnerable, right? We're men. We don't know. Everything's fine on the outside, and inside we're just like going nuts. It's like a duck on the water.
Yeah.
You look all calm, and your feet underneath are just churning a mile a minute.
First couple weeks when you get into the recovery program, feel like your whole year. It feels like every day is so, because time was moving so fast when you had drugs. Getting sober, like, it's very hard, and time slows down, and you just sort of count the days. But I also tried to talk to them too. Once I started feeling like my personality was starting to come back after I was getting cleaned up, I started having a great time, just because I was so sick of being isolated. And so then the new guys that would come in would say the same thing, and they'd be like, oh, I can't wait to leave, I can't wait to be out of here. And I'm like, the reason why I tried to stop them is because I used to be like that, and I realized that it didn't do me any good. Right. So I would try to give them what I learned over the past, I don't know, 7 years or so of using, that I wanted to just package it up and hand it to them and say, here, trust me.
Right.
There's people that I thought for sure were going to be doing great, and then that haven't been, that relapsed right away. And then there was some people that I thought had no shot in hell, and they're still doing all right.
Yeah, I know a couple of them.
Know.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive though, and I'm proud of those people. The other ones, I mean, you can kind of tell, who's kind of going out sometimes and who's not. Just who by how they share and how much of it they share. If they're just being complacent, just sitting back in the corner, got something to say,
Yeah.
You can just tell in a lot of ways, but like you said, those couple people like ended up like totally changing my mind. I'm like, wow, they just didn't like being in the position they were in.
Yeah, at the
current rules.
Moment, yeah.
Got rules, you got lights out at so and so, man. You got to share your feelings. You got to write this down. You got to ask to go out anywhere. You got to wait for your phone, which nowadays it's like, what? I don't get my phone.
We don't realize how much of an addiction that also is. It's like you having your phone on demand, because it's like you never have to be bored anymore. You just can keep going down the rabbit hole of YouTube or on social media, keep looking at pictures all day. You never have to sit with your thoughts. And for us addicts, having to sit with our thoughts is like a living nightmare.
Right.
And so having your phone distracts you from the present moment.
Right.
And so taking your phone away, I hated it, but it was very smart.
It was a great idea. Brendan knew what he was talking about when he's like, hey, we got to take your phone. Like I spent the first time without my phone, I just spent in the Bible. Just constantly in the Bible. It was something. It's like, well, I'm here for this. Hold Fast is a faith-based opportunity. If they don't want to, anything to do with God, that's still fine. They want you to be sober nonetheless. And I think that's cool too. They don't push the issue. They're not thumping the Bible on you all the time. But man, I spent time and time again in the Bible, and it was something to read. And not only that, but the lessons that I learned out of it too. Like the first week I was there, I got this. Actually, that was after the first counseling session with Kate, and I'm like, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like the memories of it, dude.
Oh, you're talking about EMDR?
EMDR,
when she'd make you dig into those.
Yeah, dude. She was like, well, I'm going to make you dig into it, but I'm going to give you... I screwed up. She goes, I'm going to pull you out when you feel like you've had enough. I'm like, just go. I'm here for this. Just dig in there. She's like, all right. Yeah. So, like, after an hour, man, I came out of that room, dude, and I, like, red-eyed, from tearing up a little tiny bit.
I knew dudes that had just walked out.
Yeah, it happens.
I'm proud of you for sticking it out.
I did, dude. I'm like, well, I'm there, you know what I mean? It's like, and not only that, but, like, we didn't have any money to go ahead and put out, so the church in Miranda paid for me to be there.
Yeah.
They flipped the bill for me. So I'm like, if they've got faith in me, I've got to see this through. And I got a wife on the other end who's waiting for me to do the right thing, So I'm just like, all right, dude, sleeves up, let's do this, let's go gung-ho. So I get on my first EMDR deal, and I look at Mike, and I'm like, I'm going to go right across the street at that gas station. I'm going to grab me a beer, and I'm going to walk out of here. And Mike's like, okay.
You just did that perfectly.
Yeah. So, okay. So I walk outside, and I just end up on the side right there, and I'm sitting up against the building, and I'm like thinking, one, I have no money. Two, what am I going to do? Go across the street, steal a beer, and get like arrested for like stealing a beer in a city that I don't know, like what kind of, so I went back inside and I started reading Job, and Job taught me a lot. Like, here's a guy who, the book of Job, here's a guy who is befriended by, like, he just loves the Lord so much. And Satan's like, this guy only loves you because of what he's got. And God's like, take it away, dude. See what happens. And he took it away, and he still loved God. And I'm like,
and then he gets beat with any
everything. His whole family's taken from him, his children, all his livestock. And back in those days, like, it really wasn't too much money like you were rich by. I mean, it was, but like, if you had livestock and you had like 1,000 camels on you were a rich dude.
Yeah.
It all depended on that. It was crazy that the only time, like, he went through all these things, having his wife taken, everything gone from him. He finally just dropped to his knee. He's like, why me? I still love you, but why me? I mean, it got to a point where his wife's like, you should, like, curse God's name. And he's like, shut up, woman.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to listen to you, and to me, like, looking at that, and it's like, if somebody can go ahead and have that much faith and keep on the right path, no matter what wrong had happened to him, what reason do I have to go out and relapse because of the fact that I couldn't pay a bill or, something small? I mean, compared to that, I'm never going to face anything like that.
I always think of Job, too, when that story pops into my head, when I stub my toe or I drop something and I say, GD it. I take and all of a sudden I'm like, why did I break on that?
Right.
And Job had all this.
Job never did, not once.
And then I start to think about the story too, and I'm like, even if you don't believe in God or you don't believe in the Bible, if you were to take that story as like a life lesson on gratitude, on like just being appreciative of what you have, I think gratitude is like the base of why we stay so joyful and stay sober, because a lot of stuff can go wrong. You can lose anything. Like
that's life.
Like how we lost our meetings with this stuff. How we lost our community for a little bit, and we still had to have stuff to be positive and grateful for, to carry us through, to stay sober throughout this whole thing.
Nobody ever said life was fair. Yeah. Life's going to come at you no matter what and just beat the tar out of you left and right whenever it wants to. Like, the COVID thing that happened, I wasn't able to get work forever because of the COVID. And, now, again, never thought we'd have blessings again. And now we have a chance to move to New Jersey so my wife can actually be with her kids that she hasn't been able to see in decades.
Yeah.
Because they want to be part of her life now again. And I've already got a job set up there as soon as I get there, and this thing happened that it feels bad, but all of a sudden here's two more things that are going to be popped up in place to just stay faithful, just stay positive in your attitude. It doesn't even have to be Bible based like you're saying. It's just have that positive attitude about it, because things are going to happen no matter what, and it's not under our control.
Yeah, what they taught us to do was start looking at the glass as half full rather than half empty.
Empty, right.
And that's the change of heart that I feel like I've had, because I was such a, oh God, why me?
Sure.
Such a miserable day out.
We're selfish as addicts.
Yeah.
We're so selfish. We're pieces of trash, dude. We want, we take.
Yeah.
And if you're serious about it and like you get into your sobriety real heavy, like what you give. And what you're doing right now with this podcast is you're giving back to the community and giving somebody out there some hope if they listen to it and say, hey, there's other people out there that are struggling just like me. You can take a tidbit from what they have to say and be like, hey, you know what? Like the room say, take what works for you and leave the rest. You don't have to listen to everything that person says.
Well, I guess I had the idea for just bringing guys like you on, different people with different stories, testimonies, because you don't know. I mean, when you go into recovery and they're like, oh, you get a sponsor, and they're like, oh yeah, you got to keep going to meetings. You got to go to meetings, and you're like, well, why going to this meeting today? I'm having a miserable day. Why would this one meeting change me? And then you're like, after you go to a bunch of meetings, you realize that not all of them were very impactful, but you related to something someone said from one of those meetings you went to. Were you going to be able to know which meeting it was? No. But you kept going and you started to take pieces away and you started to it started to help you. And so having different people on, there could be somebody out there right now that's maybe from Michigan or from Tucson that heard your story, heard some of the stuff you went to, related to it, and said, oh, okay, well, I feel like, he had a rough past, and that, I have a shot at this too. If he could do it, then, maybe I could do it.
Right.
Just that maybe, that whole,
sure. Yeah.
Give a little bit of positivity, encouragement to try and push them into the right direction versus like having, nothing to relate to and no hope, and all of a sudden just like,
in our addiction, every single person, you probably thought you were like the biggest scumbag in the world in your addiction.
Yeah, I still have problems with that.
And Matt, you'll get through that as you need to, and you can. You know what I mean? Because you're a heck of a guy. I thought I was the biggest scumbag. Earl probably thought he was a hugest scumbag. You know what I mean? Everybody else who's maybe listening or whatever like that, they're gonna think that they're the biggest scumbag, and it's like it doesn't make a difference. People can get help if they so choose to get help. I mean, like we said before, it's whether or not you want to. Are you done yet? Are you done living that way? Do you want to live life on life's terms? I think life is the biggest, craziest drug that there is, because it's no way like doing math or whatever. The outcome was always the same. You get high, you feel great, you go down. Mm-hmm. Life is just this roller coaster of things. Great things happen, bad things happen, but things always have a way of like balancing themselves out, and to be able to do that sober and clean, it's an accomplishment. You feel better about yourself. You start realizing that you are worth it. And the viewers and everybody else that don't think that that's even a possibility, it's a huge possibility for them to do that, because it makes a scumbag like him and me, it works.
I mean, everyone thinks that they're unforgiven for the stuff that they've done. They don't think that they can ever come back from the past that they've lived on. But you'd be surprised how often some people will forgive you, and how you can find a new group of people that are accepting of you and have similar issues. And you're the one that's beating yourself up more than I feel like anyone is. It can get messy with some people, exes and, kids that might hate you for not being there for them. But if you work at it, you'll see that it's a lot better than you thought it's going to be. Like, it does get better than, it can never be good again.
Right. Yeah. How many times have you heard somebody like, you need to go to church? Well, if I walk into that church, that place is going to catch on fire. Yeah. Because it's like, dude, you're not special enough for that to happen. You're not cool enough.
Yeah. Everyone seems to have the mentality and addiction, especially early on, is like, you just don't get it. You don't understand. No one has it as bad as me. Right. I have it the worst. You don't get it. Everyone else, I'm the one that has the worst, so I'm going to sit here and sulk. They never let go of that. And so I think that's also a form of control. It's like that depression is sort of a way
self-sabotage.
Rather than having to feel something else, they at least know they're going to feel this way. And so I'm just going to stick this out and, and not open up, not share, not try to meet anyone new that relationship, that friendship might end up changing your life in some way or another, but just staying in that bubble and isolating in yourself, even though you're around 100 people, you're still isolated.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to trust.
Yeah.
It's hard to trust when it comes to that point.
I still deal with those issues with meeting new people, I hate it because I sit there and I'm like, why do I feel like this around people? And I just feel like it's either I don't feel like I'm worth being liked, or I don't feel like
that's a crock of crap. Because I know you feel like that, but you are worth it.
It's nice to hear people say that, but then I don't know what it is. There's something that just makes it to where it's hard for me to feel comfortable speaking to people, because for so long all I knew was that I was a drug addict, you know? And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm playing on the same field as everyone else now. I'm not, out using. I'm in the real world, and like so. And then you try and talk to people, and you just kind of feel like, well, I've had such a bad past, and I assume that all those other people have had perfect lives.
Right, yeah. White picket fence, everything's been perfect.
Yeah, and it's
always have got like $1,500 in the bank account at every given day.
And I'm acting as if I'm one of them, but they don't know who I really am. But deep down, if they did know,
right, they wouldn't want nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah, I get it. There's some times when I've talked to different people in like, family or whatnot, and you've heard what I've had to say over at Elements a couple times when it was going on, and stuff like that. And I felt like it was kind of funny. Every time I got done speaking, I just leave. Yeah. I just walk like stage right. I just exit stage right and go outside and puff on my e-cigarette, just because like there are all those things in the back of your head, like, and a lot of people judging, and people are going to judge no matter what, and that's something that's just part of life, where we just got to get through that. And that is the hardest thing, and just trusting in the process, and trusting, for me, trusting in my faith with my God, and, just believing that things are going to be okay no matter what. That's so hard.
I love hearing you say that now, because I remember when you were really going through it, and you were trying to find the right job for yourself, and now all of a sudden you see how it's worked out. You see how you said your wife gets to go see your family she hasn't seen in decades. It sounds like you're getting pretty set up out there with the job that you have.
Got a grandkid. Yeah. Got a grandkid, and it's like, I never thought that she'd, ever have that. And I always liked the East Coast anyways, and because I'm a Giants fan anyhow, so I'm like, there's no way in heck I'm ever going to Jersey, and this has opened up for that, and it's kind of neat. One, I get to get out of the heat. I mean, it's going to be a different kind of heat because it's going to be humid as heck. Yeah. But we get to be around a lake, man.
It's a new chapter, and we're taught to not hate change so much, and sort of embrace the new opportunities. You're probably going to go out there and be able to help a lot of people. Just by being around people and having the positive influence you have in your heart, that people feel that energy. When I got here and I met you and a few of the other guys that we go to Elements with and Bible study, that I wanted what you had. I could feel that you had a massive positive change coming out of Holdfast, and you were still doing good. And I just remember, I'm like, man, I want to be like Ed when this thing's over with. And, I want what he got out of it is what I wanted out of it. You were one of the couple of guys that I took a lead from. So when I was there, I gave it all I had. And we were fortunate that we got the personal attention from the professionals and doctors there that, we needed to be able to sit here and laugh about looking at Cinnamon life,
right?
And laughing about old things that were a horrible tragedy.
Right. Now you can laugh. Yeah, now you can laugh.
I cannot believe I can laugh at this stuff now. It's fun to actually look back on that and see the progression of that, and see that it does work if you stick out what they've been trying to tell us from the beginning. Like, you should try this out. And then you'll see the change, and you're like, yeah, right.
Right, like, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's you've been sober and clean from drugs too long, you forgot what it's like.
Yeah, I'm special. No one's as messed up.
You've never lived my life. I guess stick with your guns. I guess if you're really out there and you really want to get help, you're going to be able to do it. Reach out to people. Consider yourself worth it. Everybody needs... whatever your name is, everybody needs that kind of person in this world. You're not alone. There's tons of us out there who are recovering and recovered addicts who would love to get with you, talk with you, listen to you. That's the most important thing. Us as addicts, we don't want to hear everybody just yak, but we want somebody to listen to our story and just basically at least to say that sucks, But if I can tell my past self something, it was just get your head out of your butt. Sometimes you got to go through things. It's just a season of what you're going through, and nothing in this world can drag you down faster than a drug or whatever that be. But you're worth it. Keep the good fight, and and if all possible, find God, find that higher power that's going to be able to take you through it, because it's worth it.
So I'm glad to have you on the show before you move off to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really admire your walk with God, and
thanks, man.
I don't know. I just see the positivity you have for life, and I'm glad you prevailed through this, and that God got you on the track that that you're supposed to be on, and you got a great opportunity coming up. You got a great wife, Anita, to back you up, man.
She's solid. I do not deserve that woman one bit.
Yeah,
but God put her right in my lap for that reason, to get me on the straight and narrow, man. And wow, I'm just so blessed to have her. Yeah. I love you.
So, anyways, thanks for tuning into Recuv Hub Podcast. I had a great time. She covered a lot of ground, shared a few laughs. If you have any questions for Ed, email me at recovhubpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.